Thank you all very much for attending this webinar today. It's honestly really great to see the interest in fleet electrification. This time last year, I think we had around 60 people join the webinar series, and we've already surpassed that today. And by the end of this, I really hope that all of you can gain just a better understanding of how to effectively plan your transition to electric. To start with, I'd like to introduce myself and EVSE. So my name's Austin Devaney. I'm the National Sales Manager for EVSE Australia, and I have a background in mechanical engineering, but I've worked with EVSE for the last 2.5 years, establishing partnerships with a range of customers and organisations across Australia and New Zealand. As part of my role, I've been directly involved in the design and deployment of EV charging infrastructure for fleets, governments and large commercial organisations. And this makes sense because fleet EV sales for fleets make up 50% of the total EV sales in Australia. So there's a lot of interest and a lot of demand in this sector.
Yep, and hi there, my name is Blessing. So I am the Business Development Manager for EVSE Australia, and I'm based here in New South Wales. So I work in tandem with Austin and our lovely team in establishing key partnerships with our fleet customers across Australia to help provide them with simple, reliable and future-proof solutions for electrification.
Great, and just a couple notes, guys. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat box. We'll attend to them at the end of the presentation. And also, if you were interested, we are recording this presentation, so we'll be able to send it to you afterwards as well. So you can refer back to it with the slides. Great, we'll get stuck in. Great, so in terms of EVSE, we've been around since 2015. Our mission and goal is to decarbonise the way we move and accelerate the uptake of electric vehicles in Australia. We do this by providing simple and cost-effective solutions through a full turnkey offering. So we do everything from initial site assessments, so we understand your power availability of your buildings, where you want the charging stations to go and provide recommendations. But also we do the supply of smart hardware and software, installation and ongoing support. We really see ourselves as one piece of the puzzle to decarbonising society, but we do have the technology and the experience behind us to support the electrifications of your fleets. Great, so
technical difficulties.
Great, so the reality today is that the EV transition is today's challenge, not tomorrow's. We're already seeing countries such as China predicted to hit 80% of EV car sales by 2025. That is an estimated 21.5 million EV sales per year over there. And they've just held their major EV Expo, which had a range of different vehicles and just had so much energy going on in China at the moment. We've seen Europe ban new petrol, diesel and hybrid vehicles from 2035. Countries such as Norway hit 83% of EV car sales due to incentives and rebates for their vehicles. And even within Australia, we're seeing the uptake dramatically increase. So we're seeing the last 2 months, 8% of EV car sales were electric, which is a huge increase over the previous years.
Yeah, look, so for many Australian fleets, transitioning to EVs is just the next logical step. And for you guys as fleet managers, I guess recognizing these opportunities and challenges is really important in developing a strategic and well-aligned plan in rolling out your EVs.
Great. So why should you listen to us, essentially? We work with a wide range of corporate clients from across many different industries because we have experience in designing solutions that meet the differing needs of our partners. Our high return of corporate customers is testament to the reliability of our solutions, our capabilities and experience in working within this sector. As you can see, there's a lot of names there, but really we work with many different state governments for their fleet rollouts, as well as big car rental companies, novated leasing companies, and we've even worked with the CSIRO to develop load management technology, which we're seeing utilised more and more often in buildings with low power availability.
Yep. So now, why is everyone going electric? So fleets are going electric due to the many benefits that come from electrification. I guess the main reason we're all trying to push this electrification journey is sustainability. I'm sure everyone can agree that it's our obligation to actively work together to create a cleaner and healthier environment, right? So the goal is for us to establish an emissions-free world where the next generation can inherit it. So this is a world which can be powered by renewable energy like solar and wind, and also just reduce our net carbon footprint. For all of you guys as fleet managers, there is a growing expectation for us to prioritize sustainability. And I'm sure you can see this reflected through your ESG statements, as well as just the broader community expectations.
Right, and then there's the lower total cost of ownership. We all know that driving and operating an EV costs less in terms of the servicing and maintenance per year, as well as the electricity side of things, which is roughly a third of the price to petrol. Yep, just confirming you all can hear us, hear the presentation.
Okay, beautiful.
Okay, sweet. Great. Okay. Yep. So in terms of lower total cost of ownership, you can even surpass and make it even more cost effective for your vehicles through charging off solar. So we can do solar integration charging, but that would essentially reduce the cost even further and makes the option for electric vehicles more viable. Economics. New research has actually found that EV powertrains are lasting nearly up to 800,000 kilometres, which is 3 times the distance compared to petrol vehicles. This allows your vehicles to travel further, extending the lifetime of your investments and reducing the number of vehicles you have to use.
All right, and the last point here is due to the many incentives which are accessible from the government. So just like what's happening overseas, we're now seeing incentives and rebates being released that are targeted at reducing the upfront costs of EV ownership and infrastructure. So this includes the FBT exemption, rebates for EV purchases, and also EV charging grants, like the Charge Up WA grant, which is accessible in Western Australia. So look, these incentives aim to essentially break down the barriers which have slowed down the uptake of EVs in Australia. And some of these barriers usually include range anxiety and a lack of infrastructure. As these incentives continue to grow, it'll make even more sense for us to adopt EVs in these fleets.
Yeah, so there's a wide range of advantages to go electric. And now we'll get into exactly what you need to understand to effectively transition your petrol vehicles and your sites to electric. So starting with, to start your electrification journey, you need to understand the right AC and DC hardware mix for your EV fleet. So there's always 3 questions that you need to ask yourselves to come to the conclusion of what exactly you need, because a lot of the time people or fleets operators want the fastest EV charging stations for their vehicles, but you have to take a step back and really understand how you operate your fleet vehicles. So it's important, and I'll let Blessing discuss this point.
Yeah, okay. So look, the first question I really want you guys to ask yourselves is regarding how your vehicles operate. So this is very important, as vehicle activity is generally a great indicator of what infrastructure is needed to service your fleet. So there are 2 things you need to ask yourself here. 1, how many kilometers do the vehicles drive in a day? And 2, are the vehicles taken at home, or do they charge overnight at your depot or office?
Yeah, so this is important. Understanding how long your vehicles will charge for, or the dwell time, is important in understanding how fast your charging stations need to be. Obviously, if your vehicles are parked there for an extended amount of time, it doesn't make sense to have a huge investment into rapid charging infrastructure. Whereas if your vehicles are kept, they're kept there for 1 hour or 2 hours and they need to be back on the road, then that's maybe when you look to using DC chargers.
Yep. All right. And finally, you need to understand what your rollout plan looks like. Understanding how many vehicles you're planning on purchasing now and in the near future will give you the freedom to expand. Look, the last thing you guys want is to invest in a solution that quickly becomes outdated in a few years. So at EVSE, we believe charging infrastructure should be smart, scalable, and empowering. To effectively face the challenges of the future, we must start by planning for them today.
Right. So after looking at those 3 questions and really understanding how your fleet works, we can then look to determine the right recommendation for the charging infrastructure that's fit for purpose and future-proof for your fleet. It's important to understand that AC and DC charging infrastructure is dependent also on the type of fleet vehicles you have. So, for example, we had a customer that had big electric trucks and they needed a charging solution for those. So the batteries are bigger for electric trucks and buses. So you need high-powered DC charging stations to quickly charge them up and put them back on the road.
Yep, so that's a great example. But whilst that is the perfect solution in that site, this solution would not provide the most value for a council who has a fleet of pool vehicles that don't drive much during the day and are charged overnight. So in this instance, the ideal solution would be an AC charger, right? And this is due to the downtime of the vehicles being greater than 4 hours and their usage being relatively low. So look, in some cases, a mixture of AC and DC is optimal. An example I could give you is a hospital that is looking to get electric ambulances as well as their passenger cars. A rapid DC charger would ensure that the ambulance always has access to power, whilst having a mixture of AC chargers can also just help them do that trickle charge during the day. So a real key takeaway here is you should understand the longer the dwell time of your vehicles, the less power you need.
And that's a good point. So some fleets need only AC, some fleets need DC, but some might have a combination of the two. So maybe one DC charger in case of an emergency to rapidly charge your vehicle up, but also backed up and supported by a lot more AC slower charging stations.
Exactly.
Great. So point 2 is to estimate the site infrastructure requirements for your buildings. So now that you've understood your operational needs of your vehicles and we've determined the right mix of charging infrastructure, the next step is to understand your site's charge infrastructure requirements. So understanding your site infrastructure pretty much allows you to design and implement the right technology to optimize your vehicle charging times.
Yeah, 100%. So look, site selection is very important. Sites that have an ample power supply and the necessary backbone infrastructure tend to be the most cost-effective and simple. For commercial sites, we always recommend performing site assessments. So this will allow you to understand the building's power availability and the scope of works. You'll also want to ask your service provider for a detailed engineering design, which you can easily refer to if you're looking at expanding in the future.
Yeah, so essentially you would have your provider send out an electrical team to inspect where your switchboards are. They would understand how full they are and how much power we have to work with. And then also the location of where you would want your charging stations to be installed. From our experience, it's always more cost effective to have the charging station installed as close as possible to the switchboard, as that reduces the amount of materials needed in terms of cabling, and also to reduce the amount of civil works and trenching involved, as that can inflate the costs as well. So we have worked with many customers in the past, and they've always really wanted maybe like a large number of charging stations installed in their buildings. However, we keep coming into the problem of those buildings were built 10, 20 years ago, and they didn't account for the amount of power that these EV chargers take. So this is where we were able to implement our load management technology, which was developed in collaboration with the CSIRO, specifically up in Newcastle. So this load management technology, it allows fleets to overcome their building's electrical limitations. So it does this by actively monitoring the switchboards of the building and then down-rating or up-rating the charging stations depending on how much power is available at that point in time. This essentially allows you to protect your building's infrastructure whilst giving you the ability to scale out as many charging stations as you like.
Yeah, so look, the advantage of load management is that it maximizes the power you have on site, and this gives you more power for less cost.
Yeah.
This technology is becoming more and more necessary. As Austin mentioned, there are a lot of buildings that were built 10 to 20 years ago that didn't factor in for all of this power that is required for EV charging. So yeah, what load management really does is reduce the power drawn at peak times and then ramps it back up during off-peak times, so you have that level and balance.
Great. And so the three main advantages to understand load management, and look, you might not need it initially, if you're doing a pilot site at one of your sites, just to get an understanding of how the charging infrastructure works, how the charging works, how the software behind it works, that's fine. And that's what a lot of people tend to do. A lot of fleet companies tend to just test it, become comfortable with the solution and the technology, and then expand out. So this load management technology, its advantages is it allows you to scale your charging stations whilst protecting your building's electrical infrastructure. And it also prevents the upgrade of switchboards in your buildings, which can be extremely costly. You don't want to be paying $100,000 plus to upgrade your main switchboard. So this is where this can come in quite handily. And in terms of the actual solution, there's 3 different types of load management. So the first is static. Static is essentially a software-based load management, and it sets a hard limit. So all the charging stations will hit that hard limit and be downrated. The more advanced type is dynamic load management. This is where you would see a physical load management module installed next to your building switchboard. It would be connected to the power, and then it would be connected to all of the chargers. This way, it constantly reads the power throughout the day, and it will downrate or uprate the charging stations dependent, on if it's busy or not. Maybe during 12 p.m. when all the lights are on and the aircon's on, that's when it might hit and it'll have to downrate the charges. And then lastly, we have a schedule-based load management. This essentially means that operators can choose to charge in off-peak times. So you can have vehicles charging at a slower rate during the middle of the day when it costs more, and then in the evening when it costs less.
Great.
Great. So we've talked about the hardware. We've talked about the infrastructure. Now, fleet managers will want to be able to track how fleet drivers use their charging stations. They'll want to know the energy usage when they go home and at the depots.
Yeah, so look, the ability to replicate the fuel card experience is fundamentally important when it comes to providing a comprehensive feel with fleet management. So this is why we've developed our smart charging solution, which is called Charge 360. So this effectively allows you guys as fleet managers to track how much employees are charging from home, and then that way you can offer fuel or power reimbursements.
Yep.
We implement this by installing a smart charging station at the driver's home. So this will have a smart software uploaded onto it, which allows for their charging sessions to all be monitored and tracked on an interactive dashboard. Since homes are much simpler than commercial sites, we have standard installation rates, which helps streamline the experience for all your fleet drivers. But look, this software isn't just for the home use, and I'm sure Austin can give you a bit of a rundown on that.
I sure can. So the software platform is very important, and we would recommend any fleet operator who's looking at transitioning to have a software system. Because you can deploy charging infrastructure across multiple depots or workplace sites, and it gives the fleet managers full visibility over the charging status to see if the chargers are online, as well as the usage of the vehicles, how much demand they're getting, how often they're charging, and then that can give you an idea of what's the downtime of the vehicles, can we optimize that downtime and increase the efficiency of our fleet overall. It also has the ability to generate statistical reports. So it can give you an idea of energy consumption. So like in kilowatt hours, what's the total energy consumption over a day, a week, a month, a year? It also gives you the ability to understand charging session durations, so you can understand the charging behavior, as well as how many charging sessions you've had during a month. So you can understand the demand on those units, and then maybe increase or scale your charging infrastructure to meet that demand. A good example is we worked with AutoNexus, a vehicle logistics company, who had multiple sites across Australia. And this software solution gave them the ability to monitor their charging sessions all from a single dashboard. So they had a dashboard, they had a view of the Australia, and then they could see all their charging stations across it. And it gave them the ability to monitor it. They can see if a charger goes offline, because as soon as that happens, they need to be alerted. So it gets fixed and is allowed to charge their fleet vehicles, because we understand your time is business critical and your vehicles need to be back on the road.
Right. So look, once you have implemented your infrastructure, you'll want a way to ensure that your investment is also cared for and maintained for the future years to come.
Great. And what we've made sure and what we've found from our experience is you can provide this full package, hardware, installation software, but if you don't support it, then it won't be serviced and it might be forgotten, misused, and become damaged. So one of the main and important aspects of fleet charging is future-proof solutions. So having that software gives you the ability to monitor and track the charging stations to ensure that they're all online, and you're alerted if anything goes wrong. Secondly, we recommend annual maintenance agreements, which is a recommendation by the Australian standards to send an electrician out once per year to check the charger, check it for safety reasons, check the inbuilt RCDs, and create a report to show that it's operating correctly and safely, as well as understanding the service level agreements of your provider.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the most important things that we all can face is we need local support, right? So you want to make sure you have local support, technicians, and spare parts available for your chargers, because things can go wrong, and that's how life is. So I want to make sure we can service your chargers, take care of them in a timely manner that doesn't affect your business operations.
Yeah, so I think when you're looking for a provider, just make sure that they have access to spare parts, because you always have to think worst case and things will break, and how long they can get those spare parts in. So do they have them on hand, or are they a 3-week delay, or is it is it a month delay? So understanding that can kind of frame where you want to go and what you want to pick in terms of your charging hardware.
Yep, and just another point, it's really good to see some questions coming in, so please feel free to keep sending them through, and towards the end we'll start addressing those.
Great. So that's the 4 main points that we wanted to cover off. It's understanding the right hardware through understanding how you use your vehicles. The secondly is the infrastructure behind it. So you really need to understand which sites are the best for you and be able to assess those and implement a strategy. And then software to monitor, track, and support the units, as well as annual maintenance agreements, local support. Right now, we'll run through a couple case studies. Yep, flip the slide. Right, and these case studies kind of encapsulate this whole process. So this is a case study for Canterbury Bankstown Council in New South Wales in Sydney. So we've worked with Canterbury Bankstown Council for the last 4 years in electrifying their sites. So they're a great example, as they came to us in 2019 requiring an EV solution for their initial fleets. They let us know that their vehicles drove 50 kilometres per day and were parked for extended periods of time. So we focused on AC charging, 7 kilowatts, which provides around 40 kilometres of range per hour. And that was the most practical solution. It was cost effective and scalable in terms of space and power. From that initial deployment to now, we've implemented nearly 50 EV charging stations across 5 sites, which has established Canterbury Bankstown Council as one of the largest EV fleets in Metro Sydney. They're also utilising software to monitor and track the charging behaviour and data, as well as for that ongoing support piece. And then they've implemented annual maintenance agreements to ensure the longevity of the units by annually testing those chargers.
Yep, great. So another case study is a combination between Linfox, Bunnings, and Fuso trucks. So this was a project where they needed electric trucks to be serviced and charged. So they came to us expressing that their vehicles would need to perform 2 rotations per day and had a staff changeover time of around an hour to charge. So this would be when the drivers come, drop the truck off, and they have their lunch break, they need it up and running. So look, in terms of design and capacity, they didn't have that much space for a floor-mounted charger, given the tight constraints. So we knew they needed a fast charger and it needed to be space efficient. Right. So they understood that they would also bringing in more EVs over the next several years. So they needed to have a backbone infrastructure that would also support this and allow for ease of scalability.
Yeah, and in terms of that space efficiency, you can see in the top left, there's the 2 Bunnings electric trucks, but there's the Ocular DC charging station, which is wall mounted. That just means it didn't have to take up the floor space, so they could reverse their trucks further back. And it's dual port, so you could charge both vehicles at once.
Yeah, so look, if you see that kind of line diagram or that flow there, you have the operational need. So identifying your operational need first, right? Engineering and design. So you have to actually make sure that the solution makes sense and works. And that's where that engineering component comes in. And then the next step is obviously software. So software was provided in this instance to allow them to actually visualize the charging sessions, see how it's operating, and have that access and that, I guess, that level of control for the fleet managers. And then the most important part at the end of the life cycle was obviously that maintenance and servicing agreement. So here we implemented that, and we're annually inspecting that charger, making sure it's operational, replacing parts where need be. And I think that really just encapsulates the whole turnkey solution of EV charging.
Yeah, and it's important to understand that like anyone can sell a charger, but it's the support side and the actual full solution that's scalable and it's future-proofed that you really need to consider.
Yep, beautiful. So as Austin was just mentioning, realistically here, we provide full turnkey solutions that helps from the consultation, partner service, install, local support, and maintenance. Yeah,
great. And look, we want to partner, to be honest, with companies such as yourselves to provide a reliable and seamless transition to electric. And we do everything from the consulting to partner services, installation, maintenance, local support, the supply of hardware and software.
Yeah, look, so thank you guys all for joining in. Now we're going to open up the chat and answer some of the questions.
And we've also got our emails and phone numbers on the side here. So feel free to just note that down and send us a message if we don't get around to your question, or if you'd just like to have further discussion.
All right, beautiful. So let's scroll all the way to the top.
All right.
So first question from Anne. Does the Explorant software allow different electricity prices to be included for home charging monitoring and reimbursement?
Yeah, so for Explorant or for actual home charging, it is still it's a topic of discussion. With Explorant, we can set a billing rate, and what some companies have done in the past is they've just set a hard limit, maybe 25 cents per kilowatt hour for all of their sites, all of their customers' homes. Right now, from my understanding, that's how we've done it, and that's how we continue to do it. But I understand that different homes have different electricity providers, which can pose an issue. But look, I'm happy to take that back, and we can discuss with our Explorant team to see what we can do in regards to different billing rates. Because Explorant has different billing rates. You can do energy, you can do time-based, you can do flat fees. But in terms of for specific customers, I'll just have to check.
Yep. Okay, cool. So are you finding that most fleet operators installing chargers at employee homes, or is there a mix? Look, I think there's definitely a mix, right? And it goes back to one of those slides we had earlier on, which says it depends on how you want to operate. So if you're going to have your vehicles parked at the depot, you'd want to be installing chargers at the depot, right? But if you want to have it at your employees' homes where they take their vehicles, drive home and plug it in at home, we can do that as well. And that's where that software piece comes in, where you can see, okay, you have John who's charging his car from Monday to Friday, and they're using 50 kilowatt hours per week. And then you can kind of reimburse that. So you have that ability to control it, and you have that power there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of organizations are a bit apprehensive. We just recommend choosing the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest site. If you do have a depot that your vehicles go to and park, what we've found is a lot of organizations tend to choose that, where it's common, everyone can have a look at how it works, can become comfortable with it. And that's generally what a pilot site is. They'll put one charger in with a software solution, they'll test it and see how it works for 3 months, and then they'll look to expand out firstly at the depots. And then when they become more comfortable, like Canterbury Bankstown Council, they're now from starting at depots, they've gone from 1 to 5 sites, and then they're now going home charging.
Yep, beautiful. Okay, question from Chris. How critical is EV charger placement, example, in an underground or even a multi-story car park?
Yeah, I guess it depends in terms of a cost perspective, as well as, fire safety is a big one that's coming up a lot. So in underground car parks, firstly, if you can install a charger close to the switchboards, that's more cost effective. And that just makes a lot more sense. We put wall-mounted chargers wherever we can because that's a cost-effective solution for the customer, and it minimises the space that's utilised. You don't want to use that ground floor. And then in terms of fire safety, we've seen the National Construction Code come out just last week or 2 weeks ago. So it is important for signage to understand that you can put a charger in an area that's easy to identify, but also might be close to exits. Yeah, so I think there is an important aspect to where you place charging stations in underground, and there's a lot of things to consider, but yeah, that's what I'd say.
Which is why a site assessment's always recommended, right? All right, next question is from Steph. Do you have any tips for installing units in leased spaces where you may be required to remove and relocate the chargers at the end of the lease? Look, that's a really, really good question. I think it's something we're seeing more and more of, especially because a lot of businesses, for example, are leasing their spaces. And I guess the main recommendations I would put forward would be to have that initial discussion with the landlord or whoever is owning the building, right? So for one of the deals that we're kind of working on, they're leasing a space and they're kind of having to communicate that, okay, we will purchase the charger, but you can facilitate for the backbone infrastructure, right? Because at the end of the day, you can take your charger and leave, but if you're paying for the backbone infrastructure, then the landlord's the one that does benefit from that. So you kind of want to have a mutually beneficial agreement there where it's like, they'll get the backbone infrastructure, you get the charger. Once you're done, just remove the charger off the back plates and go to your next site.
And that's just like a home. If you're installing it in a home location with a fleet driver, you'll need to talk to them on how that's all set up. But in terms of the actual charging station, it's wall mountable. So you can actually take those off the wall and take it with you to your next location. The only problem is the infrastructure behind it stays. So that's what you can discuss, or you can look at doing different types of charging. So we have a smart portable charging station. So if there's just an outlet in the wall and the leasee or the owner says no to any infrastructure being put in place, you can actually plug that smart portable charger into a 10 amp outlet, plug it into the vehicle, and you can track that electricity and you can report on it, which is a super cool way of being able to handle problems like that.
Yeah, exactly. Look, there's a solution for everything. Okay, we got the next question is from Asim. What are the most common seen challenges for installing chargers in apartment buildings where the building infrastructure is shared common? Oh, look, apartment buildings are definitely challenging, right? Because you have so many stakeholders involved. You have body corporate, you have strata, you have the tenants, and you also have potential renters. So the main challenges that you'll face getting into this would obviously be getting those levels of approval, right? Because every stakeholder has their own different needs and requirements, and it's really getting everyone to kind of align on that common vision and that goal. But we have solutions for that. So one solution you can have is having a communal charger that is wired to the common power, and you can basically bill every individual tenant for using that charger individually, and that's the way you can recuperate costs. But the main challenge is generally just getting everyone to kind of align on the same page. Yeah. You also do have AGMs because they have their own legal requirements and bylaws that they need to kind of see through. So they can get a bit bogged down in the red tape and all of that. So
yeah, and we find apartments, they want to be able to recoup the costs, which is important to then install a smart charging station with software, like Blessing said, that bills the user for using that charger, because it's connected to the common power. They're then billed and it's funded back into the body corporate. So I think for them to pass the, say yes to it, they just need a holistic solution that involves smart hardware, smart software, and if you have power issues, you might look at implementing load management technology as well.
Exactly. All right, next question is from Michael. Is EVSE looking at bi-directional EV chargers for homes / commercial backup power?
Yep, so bi-directional EV chargers, we are looking into it, because obviously right now, I think a lot of you know that there's one on the market, but it's only compatible with the old CHAdeMO port or the old vehicles like Nissan Leafs. So we're in talks, and we hopefully will have something available by the end of the year that's compatible with new Type 2 or CCS2 vehicles. We see the demand for it. it's going to be an exceptional technology. We just need to make sure we have the right tech to bring to Australia, and also the car manufacturers' warranties won't be voided if someone uses a vehicle to grid or vehicle to home charger, as well as electricity providers. There's still that grey area of, if you want to send it back to the grid, do they accept it? What's the status or requirements around that? I think it's still a little blurry, but in terms of a tech that works in all modern vehicles, we're investigating that right now.
Yeah. So look, stay tuned. All right, Matt, next question. How would you recommend handling the ownership of a smart EV charger at an employee's home? Is it a fleet asset housed at an employee's home, or does the employee pay for this and then own it perpetually? Look, I think that's a really, really good question. And I see it's got a lot of support from the chat. So it's a common question that's on all of your minds. How I would approach this is, I would personally think of it as, you give your employee a phone, right? You give them a work phone. You can have it where that asset is temporarily theirs, but obviously is owned under the entire package of a vehicle, where it comes with the vehicle and the charger. And once the vehicle's done, or maybe their employment there is finished, you can recover that charging unit.
Yeah, and I think some people have discussed the fleet driver maybe paying it off over time, and then, because they have that electrical infrastructure that will obviously stay there. So it's a matter of, do they pay that off first, and then within 3 years they own the whole thing. If they leave before that, we get to take the charger. There's a bunch of different ways of going about it. That's one way we've seen.
Okay, beautiful. Alan, do you see the NCC, unlike 2022 rendition, making changes to the identified risk of EV fires in multi-storey car parks? Seems different state governments are taking their own approach at the moment.
Yes. So we follow closely EV FireSafe and what they recommend. We've recently seen the NCC release, I think it was like 15 points to ensure a reduction in fire risk around EV batteries. Honestly, we are just following that at the moment. It highlights quite a lot of things around having smart isolators, a lot of signage, locating the actual charging stations in correct bays. So in terms of, like, do we see them changing it? I'm not sure. We're constantly just listening and looking at what the market's saying, and as well as overseas. But to be honest, a lot of the fire risk, it's not as bad as it sounds. If you look into a lot of the reasons why electric vehicles are catching on fire, a lot of it has been due to those EVs were modded, like the batteries were modified and they just caught on fire. Some may be legitimate, but yeah, right now we're just looking at what EV FireSafe and the NCC provide and are following that.
Okay, beautiful. Beautiful question. So next question is from Steph. Simple question. Is that servicing and maintenance from Ocular or EVSE? Right. So look, the servicing and maintenance comes from EVSE as the umbrella. Ocular is our wholesale arm. And we effectively have our team of technicians and installers who do hold parts on hand for all of our chargers, and they effectively go and service these chargers and ensure their longevity.
Yeah. So EVSE will do it. EVSE will go out to site. We'll create the contract with you. If you want to choose us, and then we'll create the contract with you, which is annual, and then essentially service your charging stations. So it's an Ocular product, but EVSE will manage that whole maintenance agreement.
Okay, so let's go through.
Explorin can be white labeled. So Explorin can't be white labeled. You can advertise your logos on the Explorin app, but the actual platform can't be white labeled.
Yep. What are Explorin's plans to expand their public charging infrastructure? Yeah, look, good question. I think Explorin is currently the second largest, I believe, charging platform Australia-wide. So we are rapidly expanding it day by day as more chargers get on the network. And I think realistically, you just have to just witness the growth as it happens, right? So constant.
We want to expand it as much as possible. Fleets we're heavily invested in, but also public charging infrastructure through grants such as the New South Wales Destination Charging Grant. We're seeing a lot of work go into public charging, and that's where we want to hit as well. I said fleet is a major part of us, but we do quite a lot of other segments because we have a flexible business model and a wide range of products to suit those different needs. So yeah, honestly, as much as possible, we're trying. There's WA charge up grants, that's public for destination charging, and we're very heavily working within that with councils and just normal businesses like motels and hotels and accommodation sites. But yeah, we see from what the data shows in Exploring that it's doubling every year in terms of how many ports are being uploaded to it.
Great. All right, James, do you have any deployments on a construction site where the chargers are installed for the period of construction, example 2 years, and then removed? Do you have a way of easily deploying these?
Oh, so you mean just whilst the site's being built?
Temporary chargers.
You can have there's different ways. We have portable charging stations. So if your site has a 5-pin outlet, you can essentially just plug it into that and charge your vehicle. Even 10 amp. If you wanted to install infrastructure, you can, but again, that means you're installing circuit breakers, cabling, and then a charger. We have a wide range of different solutions. I would probably recommend the quick portable charging stations. They're 22 kilowatt. They connect into a 5-pin outlet and can give your vehicle, 80 kilometers of range per hour. So that might be the best solution for construction sites like that.
Yep, great response. Okay, so the next question is from Tim. Is there any functional interoperability between fleet networks? Can you and Explorer allowing sharing? Bit like reciprocal rights at clubs.
Yeah, like Explorer works with another software platform. If that's what you mean, then we are investigating that right now. I can't say anything, but we see that as a need. Obviously, it's a problem having 20 different software platforms and apps on your phone. It's annoying. So a way to be able to summarize all of that just makes the experience for public drivers as well as fleet drivers a lot better. If you're talking about the actual buildings, BMS system, then we can integrate charging stations and software via API to those buildings. Like Allianz Stadium, for example, we've integrated our charging stations with their building management system, so they pull all the data from those chargers. If that's what you meant.
Yeah, feel free to just clarify if we missed something there.
Yeah.
Okay, next question from Philip. Do solar systems need batteries for effective charging as council cars are out and about during the day? Are you referring to solar chargers or would you be able to clarify that one for me?
I think like what I would ask is how do you use your vehicles? Are they trucks? Are they cars? Most likely they're a passenger car. They might stay there for an extended period of time, but you said they're out during the day. So yes, you can use a hybrid of batteries and solar. But if it's DC charging, or found is, DC uses a huge amount of electricity. If you connect that up to solar, then it won't really work. It will just suck all that power out super quick. We are working with some companies to do a full solar battery setup. It's no grid to put charging stations in and charge their fleet vehicles. And so that would work because those vehicles are charging AC, so like 7 kilowatts, but still you need quite a lot of solar and a decent battery size to be able to hold that.
Okay. Another question from D. When you move to new technology, will you continue to support older installations? Example, we have older EO hub installation. Do you still support that? Yep, really, really good question. So we support all of our chargers, and that's really kind of ties into that maintenance and manual inspection, right? So that's the reason why we've actually implemented that, is to support our chargers for that longevity. So a charger you may have purchased previously, we can still be on site there, replacing parts, checking if it's functional, checking if it's safe, and all of that good stuff there.
Yeah, and you might have an EO. We're able to support that, but again, it's difficult when like an organization like us relies on another organization to help problem solve issues, which is why we tried to take a lot of the stuff, a lot of the problems that we were experiencing in-house. So that just means that we have the ability to test things to make sure it's working correctly, have spare parts available, which honestly, since we've done that, has created the partnership experience with a lot of our customers even better. It's allowed them to have, have a safety in terms of what we're providing. It is a reliable solution that we can fix something if it goes offline pretty quickly.
Yep, beautiful. Okay, Tim, where do you see the sweet spot, or perhaps just essential AC charging rate? Should 22 kilowatts, should 22 kilowatts be the standard max rate for EVs, despite that some OEM vehicle manufacturers downsizing OBCs to 11 kilowatts, or even just 7 kilowatts? Well, look, it's hard to say. I think 11 kilowatts is an ample amount. Look, 22 would be the ideal, but then again, that also comes to power that's available. So whilst we might be able to draw 22 kilowatts, are we able to get that from the grid, right? So a lot of our grid is still needing a bit of work in terms of actually supplying it, especially as the EV uptake does increase. So I think right now 11 kilowatts is really, really suitable for what we have in the broader society. Even 7 kilowatts as well. I think they're both really, really good.
Yeah, and I know the rectifier size going from 11 to 22 is substantially bigger. So it might just be a matter of like technological upgrades in the future where they've managed to fix that size or something along those lines to make it fit into a normal vehicle a lot easier. 11 kilowatts does seem to do a pretty good job, and I guess it's just still down to that use case of how you use your vehicles, because like the average driver travels 30 to 40 kilometers of range every day, which charging from a 7 kilowatt charger is 1 hour of charge. So it's really down to that, but obviously 22 kilowatts would be great because it gives you the ability to charge at 120 kilometers of range per hour.
Yeah, look, really good questions, guys. Keep them coming through, and hopefully we can knock out as many as we can. So another great follow-up question by Tim is, I was asking first about exploring fleet operators allowing other exploring fleet operators to use others' chargers.
To use each other's
chargers. To use each other's chargers, not referring to plug and charge.
So about exploring fleet operators allowing other fleet operators to use each other's chargers.
I think that's more of a question when it comes to actually the organizations, right? So if your business has your own fleet chargers and you want to have access to another organization's fleet chargers, there'll have to be a dialogue between those two, because at the end of the day, they own those chargers, and that's kind of what they're using for their day-to-day operational needs. So Exploring itself does allow for Exploring chargers to be used across the platform. But the dialogue really has to be between fleet operators. So if it's within your organization, of course, it's very, very easy. We can set up accounts for different fleet operators within your organization in New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria. They can.
Yeah, it can be all multi-tiered management. It's like, you could have a national manager who looks over all the chargers, and then that could be distributed a level down to state managers, and then a level down even further to site managers. Like for Queensland government, we do a lot of their rollout, and they've got a huge amount of sites. We've installed nearly 300 charging stations up there, and we've given them RFID cards. So if one fleet driver travels to a separate site, they still can tap onto those charging stations and charge their vehicle. So in terms of that way, that works quite well. If it's between two completely different organizations, they would have to have a dialogue between each other. But we can make it happen.
Yeah, so like a key takeaway there is RFID access. So that is kind of, I guess, the key when it comes to operating multiple chargers on one network, is having that access card to tap on multiple Exploring chargers. It just makes your life easier.
Great. And then will there be an emergency solution for electric vehicles that have run out of charge? Similar to when a petrol vehicle runs out of fuel, we can always carry around a jerry can.
Yeah, look, 100%. Portable batteries, portable chargers in the true sense are really entering the market. I think they're still in R&D. I believe we may potentially be looking into something like that. And look, as the market evolves, as more people get EVs in Australia, we will need to solve this problem, right? This is something that's inevitable. And
it's not a simple problem to solve right now. Obviously, petrol stations were built over 100 years, the infrastructure for those, but for electric vehicle charging, we're expecting it, to be majorly built over 10 years. So it's a lot of work in terms of public charging, in terms of workplace and home. We find 90% of the time, or 80% of charging is home. The other 15% is workplace, and then the other 5% is public. it's a mixture of the three that'll help. But we've also got organizations like NRMA who have a 5-pin outlet within their NRMA vehicles, so they can plug a portable charger into their vehicle, plug it into your car, and give you, that extra 20 kilometers to get to another charging station.
Yep. Next question by Mika.
Yep.
What are the biggest barriers to integrating charging infrastructure in terms of behavior change? Are people misusing or misunderstanding how to use this infrastructure? Look, yeah, great question. I mean, I think the challenge is just changing behaviors and habits, right? So you're used to filling up your car maybe once a week, but people aren't used to plugging up the EVs in their fleets after use. So you kind of might have that challenge where someone takes the car around, does a round trip, and then brings it back and just doesn't put it on charge. And the next person picks it up, and then there's that challenge there. So the main thing is just having that behavioral change, having that training, ensuring everyone is guided on how to use it. These are quite simple, straightforward systems to use.
Yeah, and it's a lot like a phone.
Yeah.
You might plug your phone in every night when you go to bed. It's the same sort of thing. You plug your vehicle in every night when you get home or when you drop it off at the depot.
Yep.
And the whole way of charging is different. We used to drive to a petrol station and fill up. Now we charge where we park. So it's a bit different in terms of kind of getting your head around that. But from our experience, a lot of fleet drivers, they've been a lot more apprehensive around the actual vehicles, not knowing how they work. The braking systems are a bit different, especially for Teslas. It's a hard brake that not many people are used to initially, but they get used to over a certain period of time.
Yeah, look, and there's another challenge as well. Like we had a rollout and we put a fleet in, and one of the parts of the feedback that we got was that they didn't know when the vehicle was on, because with an electric battery there is no sound. So there's all these little things that come up, but realistically, as with any new innovation, it just takes a bit of time, and soon everyone will love it. So those are the main barriers or the main challenges, but then they're not that hard to overcome.
Oh yeah, another solution for was it? Yeah, emergency charging is USB chargers. So
Yeah.
that's I'm not sure about that one, but you could try it.
Yep. Okay. So, Steph, do you have training that you can roll out as part of your offering? Yep. So with our chargers, we do have installation guides as well as operation and user manuals that we do offer. With the chargers themselves, also, they do have an Exploring sticker if they have Exploring, which will have our phone number on the side as well. And if there are any difficulties, you can feel free to give us a call. Our support team is always ready and active, and they can effectively guide through how to use the chargers. But these are quite simple processes, so there's no challenge there.
Yeah, and I think it's really just starting with a pilot site, getting that training around one charger, one EV, how it drives, how to charge, what to do, and we adapt pretty quickly as humans. So look, they'll get the hang of it fairly quickly. It's just that initial unknown that a lot of people experience.
Yep. Look, last 3 minutes, so guys, please put in as many questions as you can. We'll try to get them quickly. Richard has a question there. We are finding Queensland recharge networks are still taking a while to roll out, and there are problems with chargers being fairly widely distributed and one going down. There aren't any local alternatives. So how long do you think before the issues start to seriously reduce? Look, really, really good question. I think this links back to also the point of government incentives. So as we've seen with WA, they had a charge up grant that is stimulating more EV charging infrastructure, and hopefully we can see the Queensland government follow suit and I guess promote that. So
yeah, and we're seeing Ampol and BP, the likes of those big, huge petrol station companies start to roll out chargers at their sites, which is helping the network kind of connect the dots. But in terms of, if chargers are broken and how quickly can they be fixed, we're finding that now a lot of the supply issues we experienced over the last couple of years are reducing, so we can get supply a lot more quickly into Australia. So hopefully the issues that chargers were out for 6 months is reducing substantially due to that as well.
Yeah, look, and Richard, I think a really, really key point there is the fact that when you are choosing a supplier, you want to make sure that you do have that fast level of service, because the last thing you want is a charger that is down for 6 months and there aren't any alternatives, right? So making sure that the chargers are well maintained,
Yep.
serviced,
and understanding the service level agreement. What happens if a charger goes down? What period of time should it be fixed within? Like, having an understanding around that is pretty important as well.
Okay, really good question from Divishan.
Yep.
Can you explain the importance of having OCPP compatible chargers? Look, OCPP chargers make a huge difference when you have a fleet operation or any type of operation where you need data and information, right? It's like having a phone with no apps on it, right? You can't really do much except for call. So with having an OCPP charger, what that means is that it can have all of these different softwares input onto it, and it allows you to have load management, data analytics. You can bill people, you can have tariffs. It just gives you so much freedom, power, and control that you wouldn't have without that OCPP.
Yeah. And a lot of the charging hardware brands, the major ones like Schneider, Ocular, ABB, Delta, a lot of the major brands are coming out as OCPP compatible. So that means that they can connect to any OCPP software platform. So, when you select that hardware brand, you're not locked in. And the same applies for the software side. You'll want to choose a software platform that's OCPP with any hardware brand.
Yep.
So, if you don't have a good experience with one or the other, you can swap out and you're not locked in.
Yep. Look, it's 2 o'clock. We'll give it another 5 more minutes. Please pump through any more questions, and then hopefully we can get through those. The last question currently now is Philip saying, under the SLA, what is the period to repair or replace EVSE charger?
It's very quick.
Yeah, so look, we really pride ourselves on our maintenance and service levels. So we make sure that our chargers aren't down. So we really want to enforce that and build that reputation.
Yeah. I don't know off the top of my head, but to be honest, when something's gone wrong, the customer either rings the number on the side of the charger, our support team pick up and then action it straight away, or we get notified automatically through the fault detection via the software. So if something goes wrong, we can have a look on the back end to see exactly what's the issue, and then we'll send out an electrician or a technician, an engineer, within a week or within 2 weeks to replace that part. But we have all the parts available, so it should be very quick to send someone out and get that unit fixed.
Yep, and another key thing to mention there is that the chargers themselves are modular by nature. So even if, let's say, someone has a baseball bat and hits the screen on the charger, we can replace that. You don't have to be buying a whole new charger, and it really helps with that aftercare piece.
Yeah. So Philip, if it's easy to solve the issue, we'll fix it in the day. If it's an actual hardware issue that involves a spare part being replaced, that's generally within a week. So we can send the unit, whatever state it is, to the engineer, and then they can, receive that and then go out to site and replace.
Yeah. Okay. Doesn't look like there's any more questions in the chat there. We might stay around for another couple minutes.
But thank you all for attending. We hope this helped kind of give you a bit of understanding around planning your fleet rollout. Feel free to get in contact with either of us. We're happy to help. We're happy to set up a couple meetings or send you some info and some brochures if you need that as well. Great. Thank you all.
All right. Cheers.